everyone. I am Dr. Tomeka Hill-Thomas. I am a global HR executive. I'm a chick advisor, and I am a people analytics expert. And I, for over 20 years now, have been working to help companies really better understand their workforce, create better workforce strategies for them, so that they can take their workforce, help them align their workforce with their business goals. I am the founder of From Data to Action. It's a workforce strategy and advisory firm. And what we do is that we focus on how data, AI, and advanced analytics can really help companies better understand their data and really help them better align with their business growth. You know, as that saying goes, I'm not new to this, I'm true to this. I have been in this world for a very long time. So today I am talking about the HR leadership in the era of seismic shifts. So what are those seismic shifts? So we all know about technology, that's the big one. And I think everyone's familiar with the politics now that we have a new administration. But there's also generational labor demands. And there are also industry disruptions that are also happening. And all of this stuff is happening at one time. And so it is forcing companies to sit back and think, wow, we really need to reevaluate where we're going. But the question is, the CEO, the CTO, the CFO, they're all there talking. Where's HR? Is HR at the table? And if they're not at the table, why not? And then what can we do to bring our chair to this table, to be part of this conversation? So organizations are struggling to plan for their future. As I said, there's a lot of AI disruption. There are tools coming out all the time. There's a lot of confusion as to what will work, what may not work. We also have a lot of political headwinds. With the new administration, we also have new policies and new regulations that have been implemented, and it's reshaping how we hire and the retention as well. Right now, generational shifts. This is a very unique time where we have Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, and young baby boomers, all at the workforce at the same time. And they all have different mindsets about how work should be done. And then lastly, we just have these industry dynamics. These competitor decisions of labor and AI are directly affecting your own talent marketplace. So there are 5 questions that every organization is asking right now. So one, the obvious one, what AI tools do we need? And what is it actually going to drive productivity and growth? The second, how does AI impact current and future headcount requirements? What new skills will AI demand? How do we upscale now? How does this political climate affect hiring and retention strategies? And lastly, how do competitor AI decisions reshape our own talent market? There's a lot of things that they're thinking about right now, and they're trying to answer. However, before those questions should be even thought about, I think what really needs to happen is that organizations really need to think and reevaluate where they are right now. They need to think about their business goals. So, do you want to stay the course? Do you want to evolve into a different type of market? Is your industry shrinking? Is it growing? Is your market share increasing within the market? Is it shrinking within the market? How does that then impact your workforce? The skills you want of your workforce, the headcount of your workforce. And so these are the 4 things I have listed here that really you really need to think about when you're moving forward and before you start making any decisions about anything with AI and the industry disruptions and so forth. 1, the current technology. What tools exist today and how well are they utilized and whether or not you're going to need them. Next, workforce skills. What capabilities does your team actually have right now? And what do you think they're going to have in the future? Competitive position. Where do you stand relative to your industry peers and adjacent talent markets? Lastly, the regulatory landscape. Which new policies or regulations apply to your workforce decisions? So let's first talk about the AI tool selection. Not every tool that exists actually should be implemented. The real question you need to think about, organizations need to think about is which tools serve your people and your strategy, and it's not just about your bottom line. So the allure of AI and how it's going to make your company more efficient and more productive, that's a trap. Don't buy into it, don't believe it. Because implementing tools that undermine the very capabilities of your work is really going to hurt your company in the long term. When the AI is doing the work for employees, and rather than doing it with them, it is quietly eroding that critical thinking that is necessary, particularly if you want your, say, entry-level employees to move within the company. So leadership must distinguish between tools that augment human judgment and tools that replace it entirely, because the consequences really could compound over time. And I have here kind of an example. I can give you a perfect example of a client that I worked with. It was a very large client. They wanted to implement some new AI tools to their entry-level employees. It was an accounting firm. However, they said that if they replaced the skills that these young people did with these tools, they were really afraid that these people would not be partner ready. And so they were unsure how to implement the right tools that made them productive, that could possibly reduce some of the overhead that they had, but still have these guys ready and prepared when they were being promoted up to partner. So instead of thinking about replacing people with AI, I think it's best to think about how you can upskill your workforce with AI, which would mean you have to redefine what the role is and what the job is. Doing so, it leads to a stronger leadership pipeline and sustained competitive advantage. Next is headcount strategy. The instinct to reduce labor costs through AI is understandable, especially if you're that COO or the CFO, you're always thinking about cost. But the risks of moving too fast are significant and often underestimated. So how many times have you heard of companies implementing a new tool? They spent like $10 million and it didn't work. And all those people they fired, now they're in a panic to replace them and hire them. That's a perfect example of moving too fast because you drank the Kool-Aid and you thought this was just going to be the magic number. So if AI underperforms after headcount cuts, what's you going to do? You're going to not only absorb the cost of that new AI tool, all of a sudden you got to do this massive hiring that is going to be expensive because not only are you got to probably pay more than what you were originally paying to replace them, but to get them up to speed is going to require really more training. What if instead you're thinking about replacing people, you're thinking about using AI tools to better improve the efficiency of the workers? So it's not really about headcount. Well, then what you're going to have to do is then think about how the role is going to be redefined. What skills are associated now with this role that probably means that how they're going to move up with the company is going to be changing as well. So the whole career path is going to have to be rethought about and redesigned. And then for the companies that are remaining, even if you have a successful AI tool, even if you, after you've made some cuts, you still have a new workforce with these new skills using this tool. Well, what does that mean for the employees? So for instance, you are in a medical facility, medical organization. You put in this new AI tool that identifies cancers much better than a regular doctor does. So now you have this tool. It has replaced 50% of what these doctors used to do. Now, the doctor is still needed. The doctor now more valuable to the company or less valuable to the company? If you think they're now more valuable to the company, does their salary now need to be reflected? Should they actually get a piece of the profits that the company has made now that they have implemented these new tools? So now just rethinking about how an organization is going to share the new rents that they've gained from this new tool has to be reconsidered. Now let's talk about upskilling and the future of work. You know, AI adoption doesn't just change what work is getting done, it actually reshapes who can do the work and how they grow. So redefining the workforce isn't just about reducing it. Hopefully it just now redefines what the roles are within the company. And then you realize that with this new AI tool, the organization now has this new workforce that has skills that are just harder to replace. So the smartest organizations are using AI adoption as a forcing function to build long-term workforce capabilities. So this, like I said, the work is now evolving because of the new AI tools that are being used. So rather than asking how many roles can we cut, I think the better questions are, how do we define career paths alongside AI? What new skills become critical at each level? And how do employees see a future here, now that you've redesigned their role with AI? AI impacts every generation as well. I think this is really important. A baby boomer who has this very deep institutional knowledge probably might have a slightly harder time in accepting this AI tool because they have been trained for decades on a certain role. That's going to be very different than a millennial or Gen X who is familiar with using tools, but they need a clear ROI in how they learn and a reassurance that this AI actually enhances their work and is not replacing them. And then you have your Gen Z, the early 20s. They have been using tools since they were a toddler. And they're very open to using new tools, but are they learning the job? Will they still have that critical thinking capability if they start using the tools? So one of the things I have just seen with Gen Z is that they're very accepting of everything that seems to be on the internet with AI tools. While guys like me, Gen X, we're skeptical of everything that's being published. With this different generations in the company, with the fact that you're going to have to redefine how people now are moving within the company, career pathing is now going to change. It has to. From the current role where you apply AI basics to tasks to being an AI specialist, where you become an expert in using the AI tool, to then you see in this AI used across different teams, it becomes functional. The senior leader who's driving the organization with this wide AI fluency. But it's very important that employees need to see a clear, achievable path forward with the use of AI. Organizations, they can talk about skill requirements at every level, including AI fluency, but I think they need to understand why it's important to them, how they can use this to grow in the company. And I think at the end it will help them understand that this isn't about just AI replacing them, but about you are on this journey with us and we want you to come along for the ride. Next is recruiting in a new landscape. So there's AI fluency is rewriting the rules of talent competition. A few years ago, where technology firms relied very heavily on H-1B visa holders because they did not have enough people in America to do this job. Now with technology and with the pressure from new administration, hiring H-1B visa holders has now become way more difficult. So thinking about how you're going to recruit, the question isn't now who are you competing with, it's now who are you competing for. Because now different companies are in the same boat. They're thinking about how they can get these entry-level people who are familiar with AI tools. And now also different industries are fighting for the same people in the most unlikeliest ways. A great example that I had with a client, there was a hospital that was having trouble recruiting for the people who turned down the beds and cleaned the floors and everything because they had opened up an Amazon distribution center about 15 miles away. So they were competing with Amazon, which 15 years ago, that would never have been an issue. So AI is reshaping who you compete for. So there's this new competitor set because everyone has these new skills. Very interesting too is that there's a faster skill obsolescence. Degree that I got, my master's degree, it means nothing now. People who are having these advanced degrees, they realize that the degrees are just eroding and it's not as useful now. So recruiters are now evaluating learning agility and how quickly they can get up to speed with using some of these tools. And because of this is shifting salary ranges, right? Because AI fluency is now pretty much is on every JD for every job, no matter what. There's a mention of AI in every tool, in every job. So it is really changing how people are presenting themselves when they apply for jobs. It is changing how companies are looking at their workforce. And as a result, I think it does change the compensation benchmark pretty rapidly, especially since for a lot of companies, they are looking for people across different industries to come in and help them. So these questions that I talked about, obviously, this just goes beyond just CHRO, right? These are questions that the Chief Strategy Officer is doing, the Chief Technology Officer, they're having these conversations, the CFO is at the table, and then there's the CHRO. But the CHRO, these HR leaders, in my opinion, are kind of like reacting to the conversations that the CTO and the CFO that they're having. They're the ones that are like kind of presenting numbers and then kind of walking away. They're not really providing true insights on how the organization can better understand their workforce in order to make some of these better decisions. So in my opinion, I feel like what has been happening, like HR leaders, we are just fantastic in calculating numbers. We know how to calculate headcount and turnover rates and time to hire. We can program the heck out of, dashboards. We love dashboards, right? But do we know how to talk about the workforce in regards to the business? Do we know how to talk about how the workforce and the decisions of the workforce impact revenue, productivity, and the AI implementation? I feel that what is really needed for HR right now is that we really need to learn to go beyond the numbers. So for example that I have here, when we talk about, for instance, executive leadership and how well we're doing, what we have done, well, here are the performance review scores. This is how they're doing. But what is actually more meaningful is when, instead of talking about performance review scores, what if we talked about the executives and how they were meeting their KPIs, their billable hours, their revenue, and their productivity goals, right? That is the impact that HR can bring, because now they're thinking and talking about the workforce in a way that the revenue people, the technology people, all these people can understand because it's in their language. It's not just performance review. Second thing that I think is important for HR leaders to do is get fluent in AI, because credibility depends on it. You cannot advise on what you do not understand. So I feel that if HR leaders invested in AI literacy and they can evaluate the tools that best serve their workforce, anticipate implementation risks, and speak credibly among the CTO and the CFO, and strategic discussions will be just so much more meaningful. I think it's very important that we don't just resist AI, because I think there's this lot of fear that AI is going to take our job, so we always push against it. But go with the flow, embrace the AI knowledge, because then with that, you can actually influence some of the decisions that are being made. And then third thing I think HR would really benefit from is stop treating your workforce as a monolith. Not everybody's going to learn the AI tool the exact same way. And example I have here is that the 53-year-old in Iowa who's at the plant probably needs more contextual, patient, hands-on training, and that's going to be different than the 23-year-old who just recently got hired at a different plant, who learned a lot of these tools when he was in high school, because in Detroit, a lot of the high school programs have programs specifically to plants as part of a feeder program into their organization. So being just very conscious that Gen Z is not going to learn the same as a baby boomer is really important. So in all, what I think an HR-led AI strategy actually looks like, you're assessing at the starting point, kind of understanding what's happening with your company, where you want to go, and then the workforce dynamics. You're evaluating tools more strategically. You're pushing back with the CTO, identifying which tools augment human capability versus which ones that hollow it out, versus which ones where it's just all about cost savings and it's not about productivity enhancement. You need to always segment your workforce, build differentiated upskilling and adoption plans. And lastly, connect the workforce to business at all times. Whenever you're in the room, you need to talk in a language that they understand. Thinking about revenue, thinking about operations, ROI, and all those things. And when you do all of that, in my opinion, the best outcome is not just efficiency, it actually brings a sense of belonging to the workers. Because, the vision that HR should champion is, it is not about cost reduction. The organizations that will lead their industry are those that use AI to make the people more productive, happier, more fulfilled. And when you do that, they're going to end up being more connected to the mission of the business. And I think HR leaders are uniquely positioned to ensure this outcome, but only if they're willing to lead with strategy and not just simple compliance. So the key takeaways here for HR leaders: always assess before you act. Talk to the CTO, the CEO, the CSO, and ask them, where do you want this company to go? Again, are we going to stay the course? Are we going to evolve into different types of business? Are we going to be a bigger share of the industry? Do you expect us growing more? And then once you figure that out, understand that, then you become more strategic on headcount. How does AI performance impact your workforce? Is it about keeping the same number of people but bringing in a tool to enhance their work? Or is it to bring in a tool to replace some of the employees that are doing reductive type of work that can be automated. Invest in your own AI fluency. This is incredibly important. You want to know what you're talking about. Next, whenever you're talking about anything related to HR, always connect it back to the business in some way. And next, always never assume that your employees are all one and the same. They differentiate by not just generation, but also by the role, by the location, and by the manager who they work for as well. The HR's moment is right now. We have so much to give, so much to say, so much that we influence at this very moment because we're at this crossroads where companies are trying to figure things out. So the question I have for you is, as HR leaders, are we ready? Can we actually show up now to be fluent in AI, grounded in business outcomes? We can actually talk about the full spectrum of the workforce. Do we have what it takes to actually be at the table and bring in a meaningful voice to what is going on right now? So, thank you so much. That is my talk.